How much is the Russian dictator preventing Trump from receiving the Nobel Prize? And is Donald Trump ready to apply pressure against the aggressor if Putin destroys his grandiose plans? This and other topics we will discuss right now. My name is Irina Uzlova, and with us today is Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English, and also a local elected official in Wisconsin. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to see you, Irina, as well. You and I, for those that are not familiar with the situation, you and I have been spending quite a bit of time virtually together, mostly in Russian, because there's been so many developments in politics lately between the United States and Russia and Ukraine that your viewers in Ukraine really want to know what's going on. We've been talking to them now. You've been on the air nonstop, so let's do this a little bit in English.
You too, and thank you for all your work and for your position. And we see that extreme speed of news, and we have our possibility to discuss it right now. So, 3 statements by 3 presidents. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, told that now we have a good opportunity to end this war, end it quickly, and ensure a peace. During the ceasefire, during the period of silence, we could prepare a reliable peace plan, put it on the table, discuss the details, and implement it. We are ready, says Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Donald Trump posted that, yes, he and his special envoy had a very good and productive discussion with Putin, and there is a very good chance that this terrible bloody war can finally end. But Russian President Vladimir Putin has shown and said that he doesn't even want a pause in hostilities and a temporary ceasefire. Does Donald Trump not realize that it is the terrorist Putin who wants to continue this bloody war, one and only?
I would say that what I feel that we see from Donald Trump right now is a case of almost terminal positivity when it comes to about his feelings about Vladimir Putin. He is just, there's seemingly nothing, there's no bad news that can come from Vladimir Putin, because it seems that every piece of news is being interpreted as positive. And especially when you have interpreters involved, especially when you have all sorts of, when you have Mr. Witkoff involved, who also, I'm sure, has no incentive to tell anybody bad news. So this is, it's in a way, it's a broken phone, but it's a broken phone where you have nothing but positivity, which doesn't necessarily actually describe the situation, other than some of the players and actors' intentions. And I think that what President Zelensky just hopefully has a clear understanding is that the negotiation process about the guarantees for future of Ukraine as guarantees that can be provided by this administration, and especially when it comes to any promises that were made by previous administration, those promises are irrelevant. And now it's all about basically agreeing with President Trump, about thanking President Trump, and that's what it's all about. It's not about guarantees for Ukraine's future. That's not even a part of the conversation. At best, maybe talking about some minerals here and there. But this is, it's essentially looking like a capitulation for Ukraine that is being staged here between Russia and U.S. And I think that the fundamental challenge here is to what extent United States controls Ukraine's future. And that's also something that I think is a test of this terminal positivity, because if Donald Trump is convinced that he controls Ukraine's future, in part because he's been led to believe that he controls Ukraine's future, similarly how Putin's been led to believe by his propaganda, for which he paid lots of money, that he will take Ukraine and Kiev in 3 days. This is also, a lot of belief that everything is going to work out, which may or may not be true, because in the end only Ukrainians control the fate of Ukraine. And America can attempt to sell Ukraine, sell out Ukraine, make it a deal behind Ukraine's and Europe's back, but in the end, who is supposed to make this deal reality? Ukraine. And if Ukrainians feel that without the United States they have no chance, well, then Donald Trump does control and does own and has that control over future leverage. But if help from the United States is certainly appreciated, and Ukrainians are incredibly grateful for the help that they have received, but going forward, I guess they're going to get more help from from Europe now, because even though President Trump said that Ukraine has no cards, I feel like Ukraine has an entire second deck of cards called Europe. And I think there's a lot of potential there, so it's a question of who owns Ukraine. If Ukrainians own Ukraine, then Donald Trump is really discussing, not exactly clear what he's discussing. Future financial arrangements between him and Vladimir Putin, we don't know. But there really is nothing that is of any relevance. So it's a strange discussion on that level. So I guess in the end, I just look at it as a philosopher Wittgenstein, who talked about games of intention. And it's important to understand who is playing what game and what are different intentions here. And from President Zelensky, he is looking for guarantees of security for lasting peace for Ukraine. Donald Trump is looking for Ukraine's capitulation. And Putin is just looking for Ukraine takeover. For them, all of those words are described by word peace, but they mean very different things to different people.
But Yuri, we have a new interesting statement by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio told that Trump didn't speak about any position on granting Russia any rights to the territory of Ukraine. So, but do you think all these initiatives and messages from the USA come only after Trump's agreements with Putin, or maybe no?
Well, I think we have to start by taking a look at the messenger of this message. And if we're speaking about the Secretary of State of the United States, yes, we see that this is a person that has very little leverage in this administration. I would say he's almost like a little balloon that kind of floats around as far as the leverage. He can't, he's not a heavyweight. And so things that he says immediately are suspect because he is not going to be the one making the decision, and in fact the person making the decision might go the opposite direction or do something entirely unrelated and not feel bound at all by what his own Secretary of State Marco Rubio may have said. And when it comes to the territory that the United States may or may not have offered, in the end it's very important that Ukraine agrees to this. But if United States and Russia decide agree what they feel Ukraine should agree to, then technically they didn't offer anything. They just proposed some things. But if Ukraine doesn't agree to this, then the United States has all sorts of leverage that we can exercise, from withdrawing our intelligence, to withdrawing our the military aid, to, frankly, Elon Musk can decide that business interests for him are so poor that he might as well turn off Starlink, because he is truly dependent on government contracts, and without government subsidies, he's nothing, because no one will do business with him if he turns off Starlink for Ukraine. Well, we already see that Elon Musk's empire is kind of collapsing up in flames, because he's being punished. He's showing the truth that you should not be involved in business and politics at the same time, because when people don't like his politics, they're punishing his business, and the stockholders are being punished as well. But that's a different story. So I think that the United States can offer lots of things, and Ukraine has to agree to it or not. And Marco Rubio can say all sorts of things, and it doesn't mean much of anything, other than we can see to what extent each of his statements, in general, line up how closely to the actual outcome. Are they entirely unrelated? Are they kind of in the ballpark? Because he wants to be close. He wants to say nice things, while at the same time not be totally wrong all the time. So it's a struggle, how close he can run ahead of the, this proverbial train without being run over by it.
Mm-hmm. But I know information that Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz, they are like strong hawks near Donald Trump, but do they have influence on his decision, or Trump only can hear to their statements and make all decision only by himself?
I think that he's using these hawks in a slightly different capacity, and I can't think of the name of the bird that is supposed to clean up garbage. Because for some reason only word, this is where all of a sudden the only word in Russian is sтервятник that comes to mind. But point being is that these hawks, they're not being used as hawks. Their hawkishness is maybe a cover to create some authority for the things that they have to say, and they have to say things that Donald Trump is going to like and Donald Trump is going to support. This is why when we see their statements in front of camera, it's always, and thank you, President Trump, wonderful President Trump, great idea by President Trump. It's almost like they're hostages of his goodwill, because they could be fired next. And it's much easier to fire a Secretary of State than the United States Senator. So Marco Rubio is very vulnerable, and Michael Waltz is very vulnerable, and without Trump, they're nothing. And that's the whole point of a lot of promotions that we see in Trump administration. Without Donald Trump, these people are nobody. They're TV hosts on the weekend. But with President Trump, they can be defense secretary. So their loyalty, of course, is not going to be to anybody or anything but Donald Trump, because that's who plucked them out of nowhere and made out of nothing, made something. And if they're pushed out of there, you know, we see that Donald Trump can even take away security detail from people he doesn't like. So it's a very real situation where they're balancing their personal safety and their, you know, understanding of what's good career move, while at the same time destroying their reputation and potentially harming national security of the United States.
Why was Keith Kellogg removed from the war talks and process of negotiation? If this information is true, spokesman of Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, Dmitry Peskov, says they have no business here, as usual.
He must have said something nice about Ukraine at some point. I think that's pretty much the only conclusion we can come to. And I should do a quick plug here for my T-shirt made by Wisconsin Lakefront Brewery. Putin is a dick. This is, you know, Wisconsin beer. We get it. And we support Ukraine. And I think maybe that's what happened to Keith Kellogg. I think he may have shown some support for Ukraine, and those are not the people that the Russians are going to tolerate around. That's not what today's meetings are all about. And it's because really, in order to negotiate the terms of capitulation, it's best if you don't have anybody supporting the, you know, whoever is on the other side, because I guess that's how negotiations go from the position of strength. It only highlights the position in which Ukraine is, that there is no daylight, as they say, between the positions of the White House and Kremlin, because when there's any sort of a disagreement, like Keith Kellogg, then he's out, and White House and Kremlin can once again work closely together to accomplish their goals of joint economic project and divided the geopolitical economic projects and dividing the world into geopolitical spheres of influence. Ukraine, haha, what Ukraine? You know, this is just everybody's extra. The problem for this way of thinking is that you're leaving very powerful players on the outside because you don't believe that they're powerful. And there's going to be consequences for everyone for that line of thinking. But Europe, I think, is more powerful than Donald Trump thinks. Ukraine is more desperate than I think Donald Trump may give it credit for. And Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing more damage and weakening the United States so fast that I think it makes Europe seem stronger by the day.
Meanwhile, more than half of Americans believe that US President Donald Trump is too close to Vladimir Putin, according to a Reuters Ipsos poll, fresh poll. The survey was conducted on Tuesday and Wednesday, when Washington agreed with Kyiv on a 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine. Putin didn't reciprocate Trump's feelings. On Thursday, he refused to immediately ceasefire. About 56 percent of respondents believe that Trump, who has radically changed U.S. foreign policy, is too close to Russia. 89% of Democrats and 27% of Republicans share this opinion. In total, 40% of respondents disagreed with this statement and 4% didn't answer the question at all. So, how demonstrative this information is for us and for Trump, and does this new poll can have influence to Donald Trump and his administration?
Well, and we have those 4% I see we found that think that that's the Zelensky's support. Those are 4% that, I guess, in this poll have no clue. Look, the country is divided. And I'm really glad you brought this up, Irina, because this is a super important telling story that I wanted to share it. I'm glad you're sharing it. The country is divided, and I mean the United States, and it is divided along party lines and ideological lines, where those that support President Trump are overwhelmingly looking with some level of mistrust, distrust towards Ukraine, and those that are opposed to President Trump because there really is no democratic opposition as far as a leader of Democrat. I mean, you can say Bernie Sanders, but he's not running for president. That's pretty clear, even though he's speaking out loudly against Trumpism right now. But overwhelmingly, people support Ukraine if they are opposed to Trump, and for Trump, they oppose Ukraine. But there's some interesting details, which I think is really important to understanding what's happening here, is that it's seemingly there's what, 20, 30, 25% of Republicans that are concerned, that are not happy with this situation. And that's what gives me hope. I wouldn't call them necessarily Reagan Republicans. I feel like Reagan is kind of nobody likes him anymore. Like Democrats are now nostalgic for Reagan. But I think it's just people who see Russia as a threat, who understand all of these things and are just really like, they don't, they may disagree with all the woke and everything else. But they just don't, but just this moment of being too close to Russia is really something they just can't feel good about. They can't justify to themselves how in the world this is good for the United States, no matter how much they love Donald Trump. And that's, a sizable chunk, although far from majority of Republicans. On the other hand, while vast majority of Democrats support Ukraine, there's also about 20% of Democrats who feel like, the situation in the United States is so bad, really, honestly. I mean, look at what Trump is doing, they would say, that why are we spending money on Ukraine? We really should be pulling back. So there is some on each side that disagrees with the main direction of the party, sort of speaking, but general ideological trends that I think shows in what way our public is radicalized. But if we talk about what impact all of this public opinion has, that's where town halls are so important, because we see that whenever Republicans dare to hold town halls, they are now faced with lots of angry voters from their districts, not just from outsider agitators, although that's what they would like to think, but it's their own voters who are very concerned. Because what Donald Trump is ultimately doing is he's destroying trust. He's destroying trust in America, in our federal government, not only from Ukrainian point of view, where they go, can we even trust Donald Trump anymore? Because he can give help, he can take away help, he can give help. How can you trust such a person? To Europeans, to Canadians, to Mexico, like, who can trust two people who are supposed to rely on federal government? But now we hear that there may be delays with Social Security checks, that there is going to be cuts to veterans benefits. We're going to have people who are respected members of American society who are so all of a sudden find themselves on the outskirts here, being thrown to the wolves. They're not happy about it. And what's happening is you have these lawmakers who on one hand have tremendous pressure from the White House and from Donald Trump, sometimes individually personalized. He calls people, he yells at people directly. I think he's far from being above that. But at the same time, there's voters who say, we're gonna knock you out. We're gonna get somebody else in your place because we are very, very unhappy. And poor lawmakers are stuck in this kind of a, you could say, no-win position, although if they switched parties and became Democrats, at least they would be able to be critical of the situation, because being Republicans, they can't even acknowledge that Russia invaded Ukraine. So being Republican right now means that when you see black, you have to call it white, and it's the denial of reality on which the Republican ideology is built right now is so excruciatingly reminding me of Soviet Union that me and other people who were born in that part of the world, we smell the authoritarian thing in the air. It's remarkable. So hopefully American society, America is not Russia. There's no question about that. So American society and civil society will have far greater and more severe impact on what's going on right now than Russia has, because Russia has been dealing with this, what's called negative selection, where the worst of the worst survive and prosper for hundreds of years. Let's be honest, for hundreds of years. And America has not. We have had lots of good years, generations, greatest generation, baby boomers, although Donald Trump was baby boomer, so thanks a lot for that. We have a strong society that I believe will decide that protecting our institutions is worth the effort. The fact that democracy is imperfect still makes it far better than dictatorship, because with dictatorship, even prices on eggs are going up, and you're not even supposed to discuss it because that's unpatriotic.
Yuri, I'm nervous about another two statements by two presidents or maybe two dictators on that post, which we started to discuss on the beginning of our discussion. Donald Trump noted that at this very moment, thousands of Ukrainian military are completely surrounded by Russian military and are in a very bad and vulnerable position in Kursk region. I have pleaded with Putin to spare their lives. It would be a terrible massacre, the likes of which have not been seen since World War II. God bless them all, posted Donald Trump. Half an hour later, our Ukrainian general staff posted that this information is not true, and general staff has denied this information. More than 1 hour later, Russian dictator Putin noted that Ukraine should give an order to surrender its soldiers in the Kursk region. What I see here a manipulation inspired by Putin to Donald Trump.
I think that this clearly tells me that Tulsi Gabbard is doing her work. Because
really, in this moment, I agree with you.
Because if this is what the American president has wrong information, he makes wrong conclusions, and then it's being supported by our enemies and used against our allies, that's how disinformation on this kind of high level works. I can't even, I'm sorry, I don't have words.
But it's really abnormal for such great country, great state, and such information. Yes, we had some losses of territories in Kursk region. It's true, for example, Sucha, but we still control other territories here, and we had another position here without losses, big losses in our soldiers' life. But Putin told Donald Trump, and did Donald Trump believe in it without any arguments and any another motivation? Maybe doesn't he want to check it?
Again, this is the case of that terminal positivity, that everything is going to work out great. The information I'm getting has to match my expectations. If I get information that doesn't match my expectations, the information is wrong. It's one way to look at the world, and you have consequences of that. I think it just tells me that we need to look at, we're in a disinformation war now. Where this being, information, what did Donald Trump talk about during his first term? Fake news. That's how he looks at news that doesn't paint him in good light. That's fake. So I think that the world is now, it's disappointing when you feel like national intelligence of the United States is suspect because it's national intelligence of the United States. You know, it just seems wrong by definition. But again, that's just, I think it's awareness that is so important, because otherwise we find ourselves in a position that, you know, like I discuss sometimes, that, you know, people who think that Earth is flat and Earth is round. If we think that Earth is flat, we're going to have all sorts of wrong consequences, conclusions. It's just not going to help us. So we have to at least understand that Earth is round. And now that we see that the President of the United States passes on wrong information that was given to him clearly by somebody, probably his trusted advisor, and then this information is used by our enemy, which I believe Vladimir Putin to remain to be, even though, you know, he could be speaking in front of United States Congress this year yet. But I believe that this is a threat to the United States and our national security. Then that's a clear signal that these people are not somebody that we can trust in the future. And after that, they will continue to prove, you know, see if they can prove us wrong, but it's not going to be easy.
It seems to me that Trump is literally eating out of Putin's hands, who feeds him pure Russian propaganda, and that's all. So how can we imagine that Trump can pressure Putin for a temporary ceasefire?
See, it's a very important point, because I think the latecomers to this technological revolution are going, you know, is it possible that Donald Trump really wants to have good relations with Vladimir Putin? So bad, like maybe they work together. Those are like latecomers, because I think the situation is past that point. The situation is now, what do we do about it? Because it turns out that just because you can have somebody where you go, if he was a Russian agent, what would he do differently versus what he's doing now? We can't call either ambulance or police, you know, and be like, could you help us resolve this situation? This ain't right. Clearly, I mean, like, you can see it right there. But when we have that same person install his people as everybody from in charge of ambulance to in charge of police, then we go, okay, then perhaps we have to be victorious by A, educating people on what is happening, and two, B, by winning elections. Because if we live in a democracy and there are elections, then that means that this is a message that has to be conveyed to the voters, and voters have to get this message through to their lawmakers. Now, it's possible that there's other ways in which people become very disappointed with Donald Trump, as we see veterans, retirees, people, former federal employees who supported Donald Trump but were fired. That list is only going to grow longer and longer. But I think that the question is, what do we do? And I think we educate people, we become aware, and we vote. Right now, here in Wisconsin, we have election coming up where Elon Musk is heavily invested, because we have a Supreme Court election. And right here in my, you know, forest of Wisconsin, the wilderness, yeah, Elon Musk, because he's investing millions of dollars so that I would have mail in my mailbox telling me that this lady running to be Supreme Court Justice Susan Crawford is the worst thing since I don't know what. She's too radical. She let terrible things happen. Is going to let terrible things happen. Vote for somebody else. And it's democracy right here in action. It's election that's going to happen in Wisconsin on April 1st. No joke. So if we can send a message here in Wisconsin, then he's going to go on to the next election and the next election. And if they keep losing, that's how we can fight back. Because reality is, he is working closely with Putin, and we are dealing with the consequences of what we chose to do or not to do on November 5th.
Yuri, thank you very much for this conversation, for your position, for your time, and for all our discussions. See you next time.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Thank you. Thank you. Take care of yourself. It was Yuri Rashkin, the best one, Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English, and also local elected official in Wisconsin. My name is Irina Zlova. Thank you guys for watching us, for joining us. Take care.